move on to the next one. Please, may we have Norman Chengeta and Benson Share, please come forward. And they're giving us feedback on topic 3, which is emerging issues in procurement and effects of the same on supply chain strategy. So we are looking at emerging issues here. Please come forward. Let's give them a round of applause. Gentlemen, your 10 minutes starts now.
Okay. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, professionals and other dignitaries. And maybe all protocols observed. Greetings, especially to those colleagues of us from South Africa. I am Norman Chengeta. I have got Nicholas Safure on my immediate left, and I've got Munyaradzi Tapeza on my immediate right. We are representing Group 3. Our topic, sorry, Benson Shari could not make it because of other commitments. Our topic is emerging issues in procurement and their effects on supply chain strategies. I'm just going to narrate the 5 critical issues that we identified as the emerging issues. And these are sustainability, number 1, number 2, geopolitical issues, number 3, COVID pandemic, number 4, value for money, number 5, regulatory and policy framework, number 6, digitalization and e-procurement, then number 7, globalization and climate change. So these are the critical issues that we are going to share you, to discuss with you and share some insights. Maybe Mr. Safari, you can start.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We looked at sustainability as somebody said yesterday, defending tomorrow today. So what we looked at in terms of sustainability is it is the utilization of resources in a manner that also consider future generations. That is basically talking about continuity. In our discussions, we noted that sustainability is looked at from basically 3 dimensions, which is number 1, the planet, number 2, people, and then finally profit. So although most people actually, when talk about sustainability, they measure on planet, which I think will not measure on, because I think it has been discussed over and over again. But we also take note that the aspect of people and profit are very essential when you talk about sustainability. You need to be sustainable in terms of the profit or in terms of the business that you're actually doing. Then what are the issues that are involved in sustainability? We looked at, there's the issue of the report aspect. Organizations need to give reports on whatever they are doing and how sustainable it is and the impact that it has on the profits or on the people or on actually the environment. So that is very critical. It actually a topical issue, but what sort of reports are we looking at? Who evaluates those reports? Then we also looked at sustainability in line with inflation and economic instability. This is where the issue of business continuity or profit comes in. We then said, remember our topic is to link these issues with the supply chain strategy. We then said supply chain, we need to consider things like green procurement. It's part of actually mitigatory measures against these issues. We then also recommended that there could be need for new technologies that actually promote environmental protection. That's what we discussed on sustainability. The next issue that we talked about was the issue of geopolitical issues. The catchphrase is that these are international decisions that affect the world over. I think major issues that came up on these issues are, for example, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You will notice, especially in Zimbabwe, that grain importers were affected in terms of the wheat supplies. Silo Zimbabwe, as an example, had challenges That would mean that, for example, the supply of flour is actually limited. So as a supply chain professional, you need to actually consider all those things. Then you also need to we also talked about the issue of crude oil from Russia. I think since the conflict, the oil prices had actually gone up. There was a lot of instability. That naturally then increases the production cost. So as supply chain professionals, it is very important to look into those issues. And we then also looked at issues like the challenges that were faced. Mainly, we're focusing on the issue of ESCOM. You notice that there have been a lot of global treaties that have been signed, and some of them including the avoidance in terms of using fossil energy. And if you look at most African countries, particularly the Southern African region, most of our energy is actually coming from fossil energy, from coal. So you notice that when those agreements or political treaties are signed, they do affect us as supply chain people directly. What that means is that maybe spare parts, manufacturers would then move from the technology that is associated with fossil energy, yet we are actually still using fossil energy. So you notice that, for example, Wanga Power Station or ESCOM will have problems in getting spare parts and equipment related to that. Then we're also looking at imported inflation due to international politics. Then one of the strategies that we recommended was basically multiple sources of supply as a strategy. Then we also looked at the COVID pandemic. This will just rush through because as a result of COVID, I think a lot happened, increased production costs in terms of shipping, lead time, labor, quality was also compromised. We then also looked at issues around improved supply chain resilience, but some of the strategies that we actually thought were recommended were issues to do with innovation, import substitution, and multiple sources of supply. I'll tell you, most people would never have dreamt that our Institute of Technology would actually supply ventilators, but due to COVID, they ended up being a supplier of ventilators because of some of these challenges. We then also looked at the issue of value for money as an emerging issue. We said value for money is something that is well worth the money that is spent on it. We discussed around the issue that value for money is not about price. It's about the worth or the project, the value of the product, not the price. So it is very critical to differentiate that the two. The discussion was actually to say there are issues to do with cost. If you want a quality product, there are costs associated with that product. Sustainability to meet customer requirements is our goal. But how do we get that? We need to analyze the value. Then especially from the public procurement sector, we notice that there's going to be an increased lead time because of other processes that actually put in the process. Some of the strategies that were actually then recommended were basically collaboration, shared procurements. Instead of entities procuring differently, they can use the procurement, the shared procurement method. And then we also talked about value engineering and the value analysis, which I think our colleagues who did the due diligence elaborated. So we will not explain more on the value analysis. The other issue that is emerging was basically the issue of globalization. This is a system risk. One effect on one country can actually result in shockwaves in other countries. So globalization, the concept of being in one village, the world being the one village has got its own challenges that we thought as procurement professionals we should be aware of. Issues to do with climate change. There's an impact on quality of products. So what did we recommend as some of the strategies or solutions to this? We recommend factory assessment tests, ISO certifications and standardization. This will reduce a lot of inspections and assessments. If you're going to be dealing with the ISO certified suppliers, they've already been assessed, and we're assuming that quality is actually assured. Quality assurance is taken care of in terms of ISO certifications. Then the other one was actually supply optimization, digitization, as well as the e-procurement. Then the other issue that was raised was the issue of regulatory and policy framework. There have been a lot of issues to do with empowerment and equity issues, domestic preferences. These affect supply chain. If, for example, you go to the public procurement and the PPDPA Act, you notice that there's a lot of discussion around promoting domestic suppliers, the issues around promoting women-owned business or previously disadvantaged communities, such as women, indigenous people, and people living with disabilities. That affects the supply chain activities as well. Our recommendation on that in terms of a strategy was that we could use supply development programs. We could also contribute towards policy formulation as procurement and regulatory authorities, especially institutions like PRAS and CIPS and other associations. They can contribute to policy formulations. That way, the legal framework or the policies are not such that they affect negatively the activities, but they contribute positively to the way that we do business. In short, or in a nutshell, that's what we have for you.
Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much for sharing with us those emerging issues. Let's get some feedback, questions, comments, alternative viewpoints. Please go ahead. Let me give you this mic.
Thank you for that great presentation. So I wanted to find out, particularly my interest is with our young people in terms of what are the top skills that they should acquire, because the world is changing. You did make a good presentation, but obviously it means that the old traditional skills that some of us have may not be relevant in the next 2 or so years. So,
thank you very much. May we have some more questions, comments? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. It was well articulated. I think when it came to the examples, that's where I just need to give a bit of caution. For example, on geopolitical factors that you highlighted, if I heard you correctly, you were talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, and you gave an example of wheat. I would have actually asked you in vernacular, but let me try to ask you in English. Have you ever experienced the shortage of wheat here in the country, or a rise in price of flour? Obviously, no. This year, I'm talking of this year. Okay. Okay.
Please let him finish.
Okay.
We have different perspectives. He hasn't finished yet. You don't know where he's leading. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, for protecting me. This year, according to the media, because we all rely on media, we have got a bumper harvest of wheat. Okay. And statistically, it's not proven that we've been affected in terms of shortages of wheat. I'm just trying to help out, especially from an academic point of view. Okay, probably if we had used an example of, for example, like if you remember years back, probably some of us were still young, but the Renamo War, which actually caused disruptions on the Beira corridor for fuel. I think that would be a good example.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So just to reframe it in my mind, he's not differing at all with your content or something. He's just saying maybe your example is not the best to illustrate the issue. So I wouldn't want us to get derailed and start focusing on the example. But in essence, he's agreeing with the substance, with the content of your analysis. Right, there was a hand up here. Thank you, sir. I really like the fact that you're somebody who really goes down on issues and look at the quintessential elements. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, colleagues, for the beautiful presentation. I thought on the emerging issues were also, yeah, you touched a little bit on the digitization. I thought you were also going to touch on the most emerging issues like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and how it can be applied within the supply chain domain, especially to do right now. There's a lot of talk about data analytics. So I think those are some of the emerging issues that we thought you could also include in your presentation. Thank you.
So if I'm to rephrase that, I'm actually looking at that as, and remember I said questions, comments, or additions. This is really an addition where we are saying, in addition to what you have presented, I also believe that machine learning and issues of artificial intelligence really are important, and we as practitioners need to take those into account. Any other comments? Yes, there's a hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my comment is on, I think it dovetails with the question that was asked. I think the guys haven't answered on what can we do for our children now that the world is fast changing.
All right.
And I'm speaking to parents who are here, mothers, fathers. I think where the world is going, one of the most critical things that we will need going into the future is for our children to learn languages, especially I would say Mandarin, Portuguese and French. Those languages are critical. A child that speaks Portuguese, French, and English is versatile in the rest of Africa. So language is barriers. And if we're going to be an international or global world, I read somewhere that children can learn as many languages as they are taught. So they are unlike us. And I think we need to take a deliberate action to make our children be exposed to learning of languages, because then that will make them global players and they can negotiate at every level. I think that's critical for us going forward.
Thank you. So I had not yet given them the opportunity. They will respond, but just to say, yeah, thank you very much for that point. Gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll first of all tackle the issue on the geopolitical. Maybe just to narrate the real impact of geopolitical. When you look at the current geopolitical, it's actually a balance between the G7 and the BRICS nation. That is where it's actually emanating from. When you look at the G7, you're looking at the US, Germany, and so forth. Then on the BRICS, you're also looking at Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So in terms of economic balance, you can actually see where it's actually emanating from. But when you now look at the issue of our examples, remember at CIPS, we are not only looking at Zimbabwe, we are looking at global. When you look at the impact of geopolitical, especially in terms of cereal products, the whole of Middle East was affected in terms of pricing. When you look at countries like Jordan, countries like Egypt, they were actually affected. You can actually check on the internet, the price of their cereal products actually went up by more than 35%. And when you also look at the contribution of Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine contributes 9% of the cereal production in the world, whilst Russia is looking at about 21%. So the two countries are looking at about 30% in terms of contribution. And Zimbabwe in particular was also affected. When you look at the price of bread before the Russia-Ukraine war, it was very much reasonable. Though now, even if you look at the price of bread in terms of US dollars, it's now going at around $1.20 and so forth. That to us, that slight increase is also attributable to Russia. I know this year we're going to have a bumper harvest in terms of wheat, but the reports that are coming from the Grain Millers Association of Zimbabwe actually are very clear in terms of what happened in terms of pricing of cereal products. Then the other issue is in terms of skills. Yes, I totally agree with you in terms of skills. Where I come from, We've actually advocated through the Public Awareness Orders Board and through various fora that we now need to open up our education system to become more international. When you look at, for example, Africa University, every student, first year, they are allowed to learn at least one extra language other than English. For example, in Portuguese or French. We are now moving in a dynamic world where we also need to consider issues relating to Anglo-related issues, Francophone countries and so forth. So we totally agree with you there. But in terms of digital space, I thought maybe we did not exhaustively discuss it, but we also welcome the other new ideas that came up. And then I think those are the critical issues that came to us that we tried to answer.
Gentlemen, you did me proud. You took this topic, you unpacked it for us, and you did it in a compact way, and you responded to the questions in a very convincing way. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. And just to add my 2 cents to your question, sir, about the skills we need to teach our children. I am a facilitator for the British Council, and there's a program they are rolling out. There's a convergence of thinking from the United Nations, from other organizations involved in education, that they are critical skills that our students need today. And the 6 that have been focused on are, number 1, critical thinking and problem solving. That's universal. It's being acknowledged that our children will fare better in this world when they master critical thinking and problem solving. Communication and collaboration. It has been seen that there are students who are excellent academically, but they don't communicate well, they don't collaborate well with others. So that's another one. Creativity and imagination. It has also been identified as a critical skill for our children. Citizenship, just learning the rights and responsibilities of being a citizen. Digital literacy, the gentleman touched on it. That's another one. And finally, leadership and personal development. So those are called 21st century skills or core skills or essential skills. And those have been identified as critical for our students. And I agree with the language one as well. Now, an important announcement. If you are not wearing one of your CIPS t-shirts, please make an effort to go and get it now.